千地万象のままに風を受ける日向ぼっこの時間ですよ。
Jianxin is undoubtedly one of the most versatile units in Wuthering Waves because she does literally everything a character can provide to your team building, whether it's high value shields that can be shared across all teammates, continuous health regeneration for the on-field character, enemy grouping, decent personal damage, and lastly damage buff for insane units like Alcharo and Zhang Yao. However, she does have a few cons or disadvantages like inefficiency of regenerating Concerto and resonance energy, huge uninterrupted restrictions on her Forte circuit, and a relatively slow-paced playstyle as a support, which makes it a bit difficult to rotate your team fast enough, leading to slower clear times for difficult content in the game such as hologram bosses and the Tower of Adversity. Like I do with all of my character guides, I will not only break down her kit for you to understand her different playstyles, but I'll also provide solutions to all the aforementioned cons or disadvantages because I believe every character is special in their own way regardless of the problems associated with their kit, so it's up to the player to figure out how to best optimize that character to fit their playstyle. If it's your first time here, be sure to leave a like and subscribe because it's free, you can always change your mind, and it's the best way to help support the channel. There's a lot to cover, so let's get into it. In this video, we're going to be covering 6 main sections, including why she's currently a must-build character, Forte circuit explanation, team building, how to regenerate Concerto energy faster, weapons fit for different playstyles in your team, and lastly, echoes fit for different roles in your team. Let's start with why she's a must-build character. Jianxin has been overlooked by many players in the Wuthering Waves community due to several reasons, and this is because most players want characters that excels at one particular aspect of the game, including DPS, sub-DPS, and healer playstyles. Jianxin, being a character that fulfills all these roles, gives players the impression that she's a jack of all trades but master of none, giving them no incentive to actually build and test her. I have to admit that I had no reason to build her until Zhang Yao's arrival in the game, whose main damage source is considered as resonance liberation damage. I do not have Yinlin on my account, so the first thought that popped into my head after reading Zhang Yao's weapon passive was, doesn't Jianxin's outro buff resonance liberation? That's when I finally started to build and test her using different rotations and team comps, and I realized that she performs really well in a very specific role, including healing and buffing. At this point, you're probably asking yourself why I didn't add generating of shields to the list of roles that she excels at when built correctly, but it's generating of shields that create her main problem as a support, and that is slow-paced gameplay. Keep in mind that generating of shields is directly tied to her damage output in the sense that she needs to spend time dealing high amounts of damage to the enemy when her Forte is full, and when that's done, she and her teammate will gain the highest level of shielding that is currently in the game. In my opinion, this is what holds her back as the ultimate and versatile support or sub-DPS in the game, because the time that you spend on the field generating your shield or dealing her highest possible damage from her Forte is considerably long if you build her as a support with the intention of providing shielding for your Alcharo or Zhang Yao, which can affect your clear times in hologram boss fights or the Tower of Adversity. However, when it comes to her healing, buffing, and grouping capabilities, her long on-field time does not become an issue at all because her resonance liberation is effective at grouping small enemies, which is very useful in the Tower of Adversity, and there are simple methods that you can use to gain the full effect of her healing capabilities and generate high amount of Concerto energy to outro from the field quicker to your main DPS like Alcharo or Zhang Yao to buff them and clear content much faster. This makes Jianxin a viable pick for those who do not have Yinlin, so don't be forced to pull for Yinlin just yet because you probably lost your 50-50 to Jianxin already. However, If you already have Yinlin, the good news is that Furina can now rest because Jianxin can offer decent healing for your whole team, which can easily proc the Rejuvenating Glow Echo Buffing effect. I will explain this in detail at the team building section, so be sure to stick around. Let's look at her Forte circuit to get a deep understanding of what it actually means. There's a lot of information here, so let's try to make it simple. When your Forte bar is full, Jianxin can enter the Zutian progress state. This will deal continuous shock damage to the enemy and provide shielding based on certain stages known as the minor Zutian and the major Zutian. The major Zutian is further divided into two separate stages or bars with its own shielding and damage scaling. When Jianxin starts the Zutian progress, you can see that her Forte bar has changed and is now divided into three separate bars. The first bar on your right is called the minor Zutian and will provide a shock damage to the enemy when that bar is completely depleted, which looks something like this. However, the shield scaling is different for when you completely drain the minor Zutian bar and when you don't fully drain it or gets interrupted. When it's not completed or when you're interrupted by the enemy, the shield you gain also looks something like this. Keep in mind that you can only gain this small shield if you drain at least half of the minor Zutian bar. The middle bar is the major Zutian inner, which will deal shock damage as well when it's completed, but it does not have a separate scaling for when it's interrupted or when it's not completed like the minor Zutian we previously looked at. So if you're interrupted, you will not gain any shielding. This applies to the last bar, which is called the major Zutian outer as well. When you're able to use the major Zutian outer, the level of shielding you gain looks something like this. However, the shield strength scales off attack and it does not have 100% interruption to resistance as I previously mentioned in my Calcharo video. The interruption to resistance is there, but it's actually quite small and only noticeable if your on-field characters is actively attacking the enemy. So this means that you can have interruption to resistance against non-lethal consecutive attacks while you have the shield, but one shot hit will send you flying. You will not lose any health if you have stacked plenty of attack on Jianxin so that you'll be able to tank more damage. Now let's get to the most important part of her Forte, which is the healing. As you can see here, I swapped to another character without completing the minor Zutian bar, which gave me a small amount of shield. But the best part about it is that as long as you have her shield active on your characters, the healing will still be activated and the amount of healing you receive does not depend on the level of shielding that you have. But this brings up another problem if she is primarily the healer in your team, because if you get hit and the shield completely breaks, you will lose the healing. However, there are three ways to work around this. For the first fix, if she's primarily the healer in your team, she will most likely be running the Rejuvenating Glow set, which gives you access to the Bellbound Geoshilon 4-cost echo. This echo will reduce the damage that you take by 50%, and when Jianxin enters the Zutian progress state, while you've activated the echo's shield, you will take 0 damage. So the shields you are currently charging will not break. The best part about it is that it reduces the damage that the shield will tank or take against enemy attacks even after Jianxin leaves the field, so you get to keep the shield for a longer period of time. The second way is to charge your shield at least past the major Zutian middle bar, which takes exactly 4 seconds to complete or finish. This will make sure that you have enough shield to prolong the healing duration when your characters get hit without spending too much time on the field with Jianxin. The third way is to use a particular weapon on Jianxin, which will allow her to still keep the Rejuvenating Glow buff even if her shield breaks. I will go over this in detail at the weapon section of this video. The scalings on her healing are also very high, so you can expect high healing takes of more than 2000 HP every 6 seconds if you build her correctly. Now let's take a look at team building. If you form a team like Zhangli Yao, Yinlin, and Jianxin, where Jianxin is the healer on your team with the Rejuvenating Glow set, you don't need to fully fill her Concerto energy before you swap to Yinlin. This is because you only need the shield to be active on your characters to prolong the healing duration, so adding in a few dodges while you have the Bellbound shield on Yinlin or Zhangli Yao or Calcharo will help you keep the shield for a long time before your damage window closes. If Jianxin is the sub DPS in a team like Zhangli Yao, Jianxin, and Verena, then that means that you don't have any interest in her healing, but rather her outro buff, so your main focus should be on regenerating Concerto energy as fast as possible, which brings us to our next section of the video, which is about how you can recover Concerto energy very fast. To regenerate Concerto energy faster, we will mostly be relying on her resonance liberation, her resonance skill, and her intro skill. For a sub-DPS build on Moonlit Clouds, the rotation starts like this. You first start with Jianxin by using her liberation and her resonance skill, then immediately swap to your healer like Verena. This will make Verena start her basic attacks from the third stage to generate 1 stack of her Forte. Use her liberation, echo, skill, jump, and use basic attacks to get your outro. Then you intro with Jianxin, complete her basic attack sequence which will fully fill her Forte bar. Then hold your basic attack to start her Zutian progress, and as soon as her Concerto energy is about 75% full, use your skill which will be off cooldown by then. Then swap to your main DPS. Her skill fills up about 25% or a quarter of her Concerto energy. When your main DPS is done dealing damage, you can now intro with Jianxin and starts the whole rotation once again. This will make Jianxin intro twice in the second rotation, which is from Calcharo or Zhangliao to Jianxin and from Verena to Jianxin before you swap to Calcharo or Zhangliao again to deal damage. So with this rotation, you don't need to stay on the field for a long time holding your basic attack to charge your shields. Now let's take a look at her best weapon options for every playstyle. If you're going by the healer role, you can use the Abyss Surges on Jianxin if it's not already being used by another character, since it provides so much attack and Jianxin's shield strength scales of attack. Other than that, any of the 4-star weapons that has attack substats like the Holo Mirage will work just fine. The Originite Type 4 3-star weapon offers a very niche playstyle where Jianxin can proc the buff on the Rejuvenating Glow set by healing herself when she deals basic attack damage. This is useful if you're not interested in healing your entire team but just want to proc the Rejuvenating Glow buff. For a sub-DPS role where you're more focused on dealing a little bit of damage and activating your outro as soon as possible, the Mercato is your best in slot since it generates Concerto energy for you when you use your skill. The rotation I previously showed you will be much quicker if you have this weapon because I was using the Stoner Gauntlet in my showcase. The Mercato also has energy regen substats, which is good for making sure you get your resonance liberation every rotation. Aside from the Mercato, any 4-star weapon that has energy regen substats like the Gauntlet 21D is fine due to the energy regen substats, which will make your resonance liberation available to you every rotation. For your echoes, it's very straightforward. If you're building her as a healer, go for the Rejuvenating Glow and prioritize attack and healing bonus stats so that your shield can tank more damage and provide more healing. Since the healing skills of her Forte, and you will most likely be draining your Forte gauge at least up to the middle bar or the major Zutian inner for longer healing uptime, you should prioritize leveling her Forte to tank more damage and provide more healing. If you're going by the sub-DPS role where you want to deal a little bit of damage and outro very quickly, go with Moonlit Clouds and prioritize getting crit rate, crit damage, and energy regen, preferably for your liberation. So for a sub-DPS role, you shouldn't spend too much resources leveling up your Forte because you're not going to drain it up to the Major Zutian outer bar, which has the highest damage scaling in her Forte. You should prioritize your liberation instead since it has a decent scaling and regenerate Concerto energy as well. It is also worth mentioning that she has an inherent passive that increases her resonance liberation damage, so this is a nice boost to her personal damage if you build her as a sub-DPS where you're more focused on getting more outros to swap to your main DPS very quickly. I think that's everything I've learned about Jianxin so far. I will try and upload more Calcharo and Zhangliao boss fights with Jianxin as a buffer and a healer very soon on the channel. Let me know if I missed anything in the comments. See you guys in the next one. Bye bye.
So please whatever.